I'm Leo Ward for Kit Guru, and this is the Phanteks Enthoo Mini XL. It's gained a suffix DS for dual system because it's undergone some subtle revisions, which address the handful of issues that I had with this case when I saw it about a year ago. It's a Micro ATX case that can support two systems simultaneously, Micro ATX and Mini ITX, but to do that you have to install an accessory kit that converts it to the dual motherboard support. And when I saw this case, I was given a whole bundle of extras. So it's a Micro ATX thing which had a bunch of space, and you could install an extensive cooling system or a massive drives and a large cooling system, or you could convert it to dual system. The revision here is that it comes from the factory now with the DS kit installed, like thus. So two motherboards inside, and on the rear we have the two I/O panels. I haven't installed any of the case hardware. Obviously the systems I've installed. In addition, and this is the really clever bit, there is this power splitter here, which is kind of akin to a network patch panel. So what you have is here you have your Seasonic Platinum 1200 watt power supply, and you connect it to the power splitter. Just the 24 pin and 8 pin motherboard connections, not the graphics card and such like connections. Now the white cables are these Phanteks accessory cables, extension cables like thus, and they go from the power splitter to your motherboards. So where you see white cables, those are feeding motherboard power to your motherboards. Where you see black cables, such as on the graphics cards and also on the SSDs here, those are coming directly from the Seasonic power supply. It's an unusual setup. It does actually make a lot of sense because you might have one motherboard running but not the other. In other words, one of your two PCs running at one time, or you might have both running, or of course when you shut down, both off. It depends how you're going to play the game. That power splitter can handle up to 452 watts, but that is motherboard and processors only, not graphics cards. That makes a big difference. So unless you're doing something quite extreme, you have two systems running simultaneously overclocked, I cannot believe for a moment that's going to cause you any issues. Phanteks did mention that they've had some sort of teething problems with certain ASRock motherboards that don't work quite correctly with that power splitter. They say these are being addressed. I'm going to take that at face value. So it's quite a large case. It's aluminium and steel. It supports dual system. This is the big thing. Now, I'm going to pull out a couple of things I've already sort of released because they might look a little unsightly. So we have at the front that air filter there, and on the bottom we have two more. They're a push to release job. I found the click releases were a little, you had to be really precise where you were pushing, and didn't want to fiddle around too much on video, but out they come. So the bottom is fully filtered, the front, that intake there, is filtered, and then on the top, if I just pull this panel away, I've released the thumb screw already, that also has a mesh filter that sits above, in this case, a Corsair H100i liquid cooler. So let me just rattle through the hardware that I have in this system. As mentioned, the Seasonic Platinum power supply. We've got two SSDs on the back, Intel and also OCZ Vector 180. Going around the front, we have two ASUS motherboards. At the top, the Mini ITX is a Z87i Pro with a Core i7 4770K, so 4th gen. Down the bottom, we have a Maximus 8 Gene Micro ATX that has a Skylake 6700 on it. DDR4 down the bottom, DDR3 up top. Coolers. As mentioned, Corsair H100i. Down the bottom, that little air cooler there is this Cryorig M9i. I've done that purely so you can see what I'm up to, because if I had another liquid cooler in there, it all gets a little bit hard to see what's what. I'm not saying you would necessarily use an air cooler on your Core i7, although it works perfectly well. But this is so you can see what's what. So the changes that Phanteks have made are significant. So for example, as I say, the kit comes installed. When I saw this case before, it had two 140 fans at the front, one 140 at the rear. This is actually a 120. I notice actually Phanteks spec doesn't seem to have changed to update that. And that's significant because when you put the Mini ITX conversion panel in the rear, you had to ditch the rear fan. With that 120, you can, as you see, retain it. So you could quite easily either keep it for air cooling in conjunction with an air cooler, or you could could, if you choose, ditch it and put a 120 all-in-one in its place, which is a good thing. The SFX power supply location there. Now, the significant thing there was when I saw this system case a year ago, SFX power supplies on the market, they were very few and far between, and they were for weedy general purpose PCs. This Silverstone 600 watt Gold, on the other hand, is a different animal, much as the Corsair modular SFX that's come out subsequently. I haven't seen that yet myself. So your SFX power supply sits there. And as I say, the choice a year back wasn't great. Now it is, well, there are two choices, two families. So your power supply sits there. Now the location obviously is a little bit in the way, and then your cables come out, which is a bit messy. But the fact is you can now have a proper SFX power supply should you choose to do so. But nonetheless, there is the thing which is, I would have thought your SFX power supply is probably going to be used to power your Mini ITX system. Probably your ATX power supply around the back where it's thermally isolated will probably power your Micro ATX, which means the cables are kind of crossing. So this power splitter one power supply thing, it makes a big difference. It really tidies up this space. It helps a great deal. Options. This case is all about options. So having moved on from that, it comes with one motherboard, and then you can, if you choose, add a second. So we're going with two motherboards. That's a given. You've obviously therefore got to have your one power supply, but you've got to have two coolers, and you've got to have all the associated hardware, two graphics cards being the thing, depending on what you're going for. So I have a reference GTX 980 down the bottom. Up the top, I have an MSI GTX 760 ITX, which obviously is physically small. Now, depending on how you're playing the game here, this has a massive impact on things. So, for example, around the back, as mentioned, I have these two SSDs on their drop and lock bays. I can, if I choose, move those to this location here. You can see the holes in this panel. I cannot fully dismantle the front of the case. I mean, it does come apart. This is heavily screwed together rather than riveted. There are a few rivets down the bottom, but mainly it's screwed. But I do need to retain the optical drive bay for that control panel there, which controls the Mini ITX motherboard. I have a second I/O set up here, which is built into the case, which controls the Micro ATX. So I need to retain that panel to control the Mini ITX. That means I need to retain the optical drives, which means that this upper section is kind of fixed. However, I can, if I choose, pull out these drive bays. You may, if you have a really long memory, recall that actually where that power splitter sits, there is actually a location where you used to be able to install an accessory 3.5-inch drive bay. Clearly that goes if you have this set up. So down here we have 3 and 3 drive bays. If I pull those out, I've already released the screws. Out comes the one, out comes the other. Nice and easy does it. Good bits of plastic, nicely keyed, they work well. And let's just show you a caddy. I mean, you've seen a caddy before, but that's what they look like. So that's all terrific. That frees up a bunch of space. Now I can, if I choose, remove the base of those drive towers, and then I can put this water pump bracket, should I choose. This is an extra accessory, either directly on that base or on the floor of the case. Then I have here a reservoir bracket, which goes in there. And I have a radiator bracket, which goes in there, where the drive cages go. So I can, if I choose, do a custom loop using a bunch of bracketry that Phanteks supplies to make life just that bit easier than it might otherwise be, which is glorious. That goes back to the sort of the original roots of this case, and it was Micro ATX, and you could install all the cooling in the world because there was just a colossal amount of space. So the options, you either go down the drive route or you go down the custom loop thing, or you can quite easily put a pair of coolers in and not touch those drive bays, which is fine and dandy. On the back here we have a PWM hub. Although it's 3-pin connectors, it actually converts your 3-pin fans into a PWM setup using this PWM connection that goes to your motherboard. All very clever. Which really puts the emphasis on the point, which is there are a load of features in this case, and it's quite possible you wouldn't actually use all of them. I mean, in fact, I doubt you would use all of them, but it does give you many, many options. And the biggest question of all is, why might you want to use Phanteks Mini XL? And I struggle with this one. Phanteks has given me 3 scenarios that they think are entirely plausible, and I can't disagree. They're just not scenarios that particularly work for me. So, for example, you could have a gaming PC and a server. The server obviously would be lower power, probably using a bunch of those drive bays. It sits there churning away and you're playing games without disrupting the server. At night you turn your gaming PC off, leave the server running, that's great. Or a gaming system and a streaming machine. So you're gaming on your gaming machine, the Twitch streamer is running alongside without taking any of your clock cycles out of your gaming PC. I can see that, it's just not my personal bag, but that makes sense to me. Or you have a workstation and a gaming PC. Now again, 2 proper graphics cards, ain't no reason why you can't do that. I've gone for the Mini ITX card there, clearly there's space to install a larger graphics card. Now the idea there would be, you set your video or whatever rendering, you're going to be busy for half an hour, whatever it might be. I know, I'll play some games. And you go to your other PC and you play some games. That makes perfect sense to me, except of course, the sort of person that's busy rendering videos would probably want to get on with some other work while that system's busy. And they could easily instead have a gaming laptop or, and this is my fundamental thing, a second PC or workstation or Mac. That's the thing. Why not have a workstation and a PC and a Mac? And that really goes to the root of it. This case is very specifically aimed at somebody who wants to have 2 PCs in one tower. I suppose you might have one of those sort of Macintosh or Hackintosh things possibly, but let's go with 2 PCs of different specs in one tower, and that's not me. It may be you. I'd be as happy to have the 2 towers, or PC and laptop, in the same area. They don't necessarily have to be in the same case. After all, you still need a pair of mice, a pair of keyboards, a pair of monitors or mini monitors, unless you're going to start moving connections around. So, I mean, you could obviously have your server running and unplug your monitor and then plug it in your PC. That makes perfect sense. But that question, clearly Phanteks cannot address. The way they're coming at this is, you want 2 PCs, whatever, computers in one tower. This is the way to do it. And in that regard, I simply cannot argue. The hardware here is absolutely fab and groovy. It looks great. There are a couple of minor issues. For example, that front panel is gripped by, the bezel is gripped by this front panel, so I can't simply pull the front panel off. I have to release the sort of this control bay, and that has to slide forward as well. That would be, I think, easily fixed, but as things stand, not. The side panels look absolutely fine. That's the back panel. It has this blanking plate over this meshed panel here, so I could put 2 more fans in should I choose, or leave it covered if I don't. Air filter there. Main panel here is windowed, looks absolutely fine. It's doesn't have any noise deadening material, and it's single glazed. On the other hand, I can pay 30 quid and get a Phanteks noise deadening material kit, quieten the whole thing down. Options, options, options galore. And the funny thing is, they've reduced the price significantly. When this case came out originally, it was £150, and then the Mini ITX kit and such like was extra, all the accessories are extra. If I wanted more drive bays, they're extra. Well, drive bays still are, but you're £150 here for this DS suffixed kit. Gets you the case, the power splitter, and the Mini ITX conversion kit for the rear, which basically means that if you take off those 2 accessories, the case itself is now about £105, and that is one heck of a lot of hardware for a reasonable amount of money. We've seen many cases in the 100, 120 quid territory. This case is, in that respect, an absolute bargain. It does, of course, take you back to the thing, however. Do you want to put 2 PCs in one case? I can't answer that. Myself, no. You may well. If you do, this is undeniably the obvious way to go about it. I would say that actually the amount of cabling there, by the way, I should have mentioned, that blue SATA cable is simply to show you the routing for the SATA cable going around to the front. Again, a visual clue. So the amount of cabling there is actually, I think, relatively modest, considering this is 2 PCs worth of cabling. The original setup, when I had to have 2 power supplies a year back, was a bit messy. This is a really good way to go about it. I'm impressed. The reduced price is obviously good. Options, options galore. I'm Leo Waldrop for Kit Guru. This is the Phanteks Enthoo Mini XL with Power Splitter.